you everyone for joining today's webinar. We'll be covering the ETRAGE Publisher for Windchill, something we used to call the PSW, which was plot service for Windchill, and is now rebranded as the ETRAGE Publisher. We typically cover 2 topics per month with this recurring webinar series. We will post these webinars within 24 hours on our YouTube channel once we're done presenting them. A couple housekeeping items. Everyone is muted. If you have questions, you should be able to see a Q&A tab on the webinar interface. Please submit all your questions there. We hope to have an extended Q&A session at the end of our live presentation. And anything we cannot get to today, we will follow up with those who ask those questions. You'll hear today from myself, Scott Rich, the Director of Sales, and our Senior Technical Lead for CAD Systems, Shei Shenbore. Our agenda today, I'll cover the welcome introduction, and then Shei will take over covering how the PSW, the ETRAGE Publisher, can eliminate data silos, a live demonstration of our publisher, cover why does this matter, and then we'll get into that extended Q&A session. A bit about myself. I have been in the Windchill and design manufacturing software space for the last 8 years. I specialize in helping customers identify where and how to automate processes. Shei, our Senior Technical Lead, he has been in this space for more than 12 years, strong focus on CAD and simulation tools for a large chunk of that, and now has expanded deeply into the PLM space as well. A little bit about ETRAGE. We have been in business for more than 20 years. Our mission is to help customers identify where PLM adoption has slowed and help them make adoption happen across the enterprise. We like to make sure that all necessary systems are fully connected and that customers are therefore able to have that complete digital thread they all need. A little bit about our standard product offerings. Today, again, we are covering the ETRAGE Publisher. We have a number of other tools which you can see. Some of these are already posted on our YouTube channel, but the rest we will get to probably within the next 12 months, including the viewer, our document management system, a quality suite, drawing notes search, as well as a number of related services. So custom application development, cloud hosting, especially for Windchill, remote administration, and an extensive list of training topics in the PTC Creo and Windchill space. A little bit about our customers. Our customers are typically designers and or manufacturers of any size. The commonality, they're companies that need to share data, that need to automate how that data is going to be shared. They'll typically need to integrate systems, usually across departments, and need to find a way to get multiple databases to connect so that digital thread can be properly connected. A few examples of customers that we've been helping with in a number of years. And with that, Shei is going to take over and walk us through a few more slides and then do that live demonstration.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much, Scott. And, go ahead and make myself a presenter here, and please share my screen. All right, wonderful. So I'll start off here by talking through essentially, the current landscape where essentially in almost every manufacturing or engineering organization, there are data silos, right? You usually will have engineering, which uses some form of PLM. In this case, we'll talk about Windchill, right? And then you'll have, other departments, right? You have manufacturing, or purchasing or quality or marketing, or other departments as well. Again, this is a 30,000-foot view, right? There may be other departments here not listed, but the goal, the intent is that the reality is all these different departments are siloed, right? And oftentimes they don't share information back and forth with each other, right? Which means that business processes end up, taking much longer than they need to be, or they end up being very manual, right? With having people, check for information or convert things back and forth. And there's a lot of opportunities for mistakes and or inefficiencies down the entire value chain, right? And not even to then consider also sometimes having to interface with your suppliers or vendors, right? And again, getting them the data that they need to get organizations quotes and things like that. Again, is that suppliers and vendors are often also siloed as well from the data from the rest of the organization, right? And so to eliminate all of that, right, we created the ETRAGE Publisher, right? And the publisher is something we developed that can link into Windchill, right? Extract data from Windchill, right? And then publish that to the rest of the entire enterprise, right? So that way, if you're in purchasing, right, and you need, for example, a bill of materials and a set of drawings for each of the components on the bill of materials, right? You can get that from the publisher. The publisher can get you that information exactly as you need it in whatever interface you desire, right? If you are in quality, for example, and you need either the native CAD file or you need maybe a step file, for example, of the part to be checked, right? So that way you can load that into your 3D metrology or inspection software, and you can check against the nominals of the CAD. We can get that for you in addition to, for example, maybe a PDF drawing of the 2D drawing, right? We can get you that information if you were a quality role. Or if you are, for example, in marketing and you don't care about the drawing, all you need is a CAD model that you can create product renderings off of, and so you could put animations and or still pictures on your website to showcase a particular new product. We can get you that information published to whatever directory or shared drive that's necessary for you to do that, without having to send emails back and forth with engineering to say, hey, can you please send me the latest model of the product, right? And again, if you're a supplier or vendor, right, and you need to see maybe a drawing of a particular product that is not yet released, right, it's still in work, right, but if there's a preliminary quote or something that needs to be issued, and the organization wants to get an idea of what something's going to cost, right, in terms of, for example, a tooling estimate, right, for example, those are things that, again, we can facilitate by giving your suppliers or vendors that information as they need it, right? Not only can we do all of that, we can also publish information to, again, shared or network drives, right? Or even SharePoint as well, or even also your ERP system as well, right? And so really the goal is anywhere data is currently consumed, right? Where it's a manual process for the data to get there, or it's a very fragmented process, right? The ETRAGE Publisher can be your single source of truth, or your digital thread that shares that data across the entire organization, right? And so now everyone is in the know, and everyone has the data they need to take action, right? And so essentially, with the ETRAGE Publisher, you now have eliminated your data silos, right, within your organization. All right, so at this point, I will pause right here and jump into a live demonstration of the publisher. And I'll start with this drawing right over here, right? This is the piston, right, that we have, and we want to go ahead and make a design change to this piston. Right? So I'll come into part itself, and currently there are 3 grooves in here. I'm going to go ahead and make those, I think, 5 or so. So we'll go ahead and make the design change. Now, by the way, this particular piston is already released, right? So if I jump into my workspace here to see that that piston is already released, right? And so I'll be doing a typical engineering task where I go ahead and do a revision of that piston, and then go ahead and modify the model, and then eventually get it back to released again by doing a promotion request, right? So in this case, let's here. quickly modify the spacing here and say we want that to be 5 instances. And you'll notice the model has changed, and now we have 5 instances of the grooves in here, right? Now we'll go ahead and revise this and then check it back in. So go to my workspace real quick, and, select those items, revise them. Only want those 2 required items. And yep. Okay, so revised, and now we'll go ahead and check them out. And I'll go to my draw, save them, so that way now the copy over here in the workspace should be updated, right, with the newest revision there. Yep, so the local copy is now updated. I'll go ahead and check these back into Windchill. All right, wonderful. Now they're checked in, they're still in work, right? And normally there'll be, a promotion request, approval process where the parts will go through several approvers, for example, in order to eventually be released. But in the interest of time, in a quick webinar series here, I'm going to go ahead and switch to a different profile where there's already, in this case, I'm no longer a designer. In this particular Windchill profile, I'm now an admin, and I can just go in here and set state for these particular items to now go from, again, in work, right, with the new revision D2, and I'll set them over to release, right? So go ahead and pick those items. Say set state, and let's go release them. Okay, now everything you've seen so far it's just a typical part of how the engineering organization will work, right, or perform, right? Different now is in this case, come over to this tab over here, right? This window. And this is again still Windchill, right? But you'll notice it says over here all system requests. I can go ahead and refresh that, and it's going to go ahead and show me in this case, system requests in this list. You'll notice the most recent items. This one is in process. This one is not yet started, right? Well, these are requests from Windchill as the state just changed from in work to released, and those have been sent to this database, and now the ETRAGE Publisher is now grabbing items from this database and publishing them, right? And so if I go ahead and pick on the publisher right over here, you'll notice it's in monitoring mode, right? And so it's currently processing, right? And what monitoring mode just means is that it's checking this database over here on the left, right? And every time it sees a new job that's created, whether it's from a user request or from an exchange, right? It goes, grabs it, and then starts to process it, right? And so as you can see over here, this is a report processing. It's now complete, right? And if I go ahead and take a look at the output folder where that part is, right? You can now have per our processing configuration, right? In this case, a step file that we requested and a PDF file, right, of that piston. And again, I can open that PDF and take a look and see. In this case, now there are 5 ridges across over here, right? And it was just created a minute ago. And so I'll close that PDF for now. The other feature I'll highlight real quick, or I'll show, is the fact that we can also do this by user request as well, right? And so, for example, in this case, we already have 2 different drawings over here, the piston pin and the crankshaft. right? One is in work, the other is released, right? And say again, I'm an engineer where we have either a request from to send out some drawings to a supplier for quoting, right? I can go ahead and very easily say, hey, I want to export these object options, right? And say I want to export these as a PDF, right? Select them, and then go ahead and okay, and then that pushes that to the request processor, right? Now it's going, and in cooking, I'll discuss the architecture a little bit here. So the publisher, it has a 2-layer architecture, right? Which essentially means that we have a part of it that's installed on Windchill itself, right? It's a very light application that's installed on Windchill, and that's why you're able to see the ETRAGE Publisher, right, with the Windchill interface, and also that's why you're able to use the requested actions over here. These export object options menu. This is an ETRAGE essentially plugin that layers into Windchill, right? So that's the Windchill part of it, right? And then we also have a request processor that's installed, on a computer or networked, device that's going to go ahead and then look at Windchill, look at the requests in there, and then process them, right? And that's what this application is right here that you see in front of you right here, right? And so this is installed on a particular on a local machine, and so this is just goes ahead and monitors Windchill and processes those requests, right? Now, while notice here the jobs have already been completed, so I'll go ahead and take a look at them really quick here. So again, the output to this folder, right? Now, in this particular example, the output to this output folder, right? But like I mentioned earlier in our slides, the publisher is very highly configurable, right? And can export to many different repositories or areas, even concurrently, right? So we could export these to, to the same folder on a particular machine, or we can export these to a network drive, like I mentioned, or we can publish these to SharePoint, or we even have our own custom proprietary viewer, which we call the ETRAGE viewer, that we can publish that to, and we can have many departments, consume information from the ETRAGE viewer as well, right? And so there's almost a limited number of ways we can export this information. In this particular example for the webinar, it just happened to be opening these up from a folder on other, right? But in this particular case here, you'll notice the crankshaft over here. We also, when we export that, we can also add additional, plugins, like in this case, a watermark, right? So we watermarked in this case when this PDF was created, right, and the lifecycle state inside of PLM, right? In this case, the crankshaft is released, and also in this other case over here, the piston pin is in work, right? So this means that you can, publish and send out jobs from PLM to other departments without fear of something that, for example, may be in work, being used for production, right? Because you can clearly indicate the particular status or life cycle of that object, right? Yeah. Now, this is again watermarking, by the way, that is done outside of Windchill, right? And so as you can see here, the watermark can stay on the document completely outside of Windchill. So I can take this PDF, I can email it out to a supplier, or they can log into our ETRAGE viewer and view that in there, and they'll still see the same watermarking on there, right? So for the life of that document, they can see that information. All right. So in addition to the watermarking, I'll jump into the request processor here and show a few other items. First thing I'll jump into the request processing options over here, and I will talk about how you'll notice in this case for Creo, right? This shows over here all the different exporting file formats that we can export in, right, for both drawings and assemblies and parts as well, right? And so oftentimes when we this one, first things, customers look at is just to say, oh, is my file type, covered in here? And 99 times out of 100, it is, right? If you have a particular file type you currently use to share data within your organization or externally, you currently have it covered. And if not, you could reach out to us, and as long as it's part of the Creo and or Windchill API, we can find a way to extract that and present that and export that for you, right? Every file type you see in the UI currently has requested at some point from a prior customer, right? So again, like I mentioned, our product is very highly configurable, right? And we want to make sure that we use it to support your business processes, right? And so almost no two installations of the ETRAGE Publisher are alike, right? Because we make sure we always customize it to fit exactly your business process to ensure that ultimately all the departments in your organization, right, are successful in how you use the ETRAGE Publisher. Additionally, I'll also talk about the top ribbon over here at the top, and you'll notice how there are several different icons, some of which are non-Creo icons. For example, SolidWorks or Inventor or Creo schematics or even AutoCAD as well. Right? Again, it goes to show that we can import a number of different CAD authoring applications that all are supported by Windchill. Right? So, for example, if you have a division of your company that uses SolidWorks and PLM, right, we can use the Windchill Workgroup Manager to again tie that in, and we can also then process their SolidWorks data as well, right? Additionally, I'll jump over to our document export options over here. And again, just to show that we can not only manage your CAD documents, right, but we can also publish non-CAD data as well, even if it's, Office documents, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, right? Or even, Windchill, entire Windchill products or contexts if you want to archive them, or Windchill parts, packages, and Windchill ECN as well. Right? So again, if you have ECNs and ECOs, right, that you're managing within Windchill, we can publish that database or that information to a database to make that visible, right, to other departments within the organization. Right? Additionally, we also have some post-processing plugins as well. Some of I'll highlight over here will be one, the fact that, again, we can take all that information, like I mentioned, we can back it up and dump it into any repository of your choice, right? Or even a database of your choice as well. We also have our ETRAGE viewer integration, like I mentioned, where you can have other departments log into our ETRAGE viewer and view and consume the information from there. Or we can upload this to SharePoint, we can upload this to IFS, or even your ERP system as well, right? There's almost no database or repository we cannot, export our ETRAGE, publisher data to. And then one of the ones that we oftentimes get questions about, which is super, helpful, is the PDF watermark, right? It's the fact that the watermark, almost any PDF, right? And the watermark is completely customizable, right? And that means that, and that's the engine behind the PDFs you saw that I presented earlier, and why these are watermarked, right? So again, you can present that information without fear of it being misused, right? Because something might be in work and being used for manufacturing, for example, right? So that goes over the ETRAGE, the request processor portion of things, right? And that, I would say, concludes our demonstration for the ETRAGE Publisher. At this point, I'll go ahead and switch back to the presentation. All right, and so overall, the big thing when it comes to all of this is, the next question is oftentimes, well, why does this matter, right? That you could publish this information and share it, across the entire, organization, right? Well, it matters because if you are, in quality, for example, right? And this is a real example, right? Where I played a part of, right? I had a case where I had a quality technician, right, doing a PPAP or a AS9102 first article inspection report, right? Single automotive component, right? And by the way, we have a separate webinar where we discuss another ETRAGE product that can help with your, PPAP or first article inspection report generation, right? But again, that's a separate topic. In this particular case here, this quality inspector was needed to extract, nominals, right, from a 2D drawing, right, that he needed to inspect, right, and because he did not have the CAD data, he was manually creating the nominals in his 3D metrology software, right, and that process took, probably 8 hours, right, for him to complete that entire nominal input for just one part, right? Because again, it's a PPAP, you're inspecting every single dimension, right? And in his case, he did not have CAD. Now with CAD, that nominal extraction process would have taken probably 1 or 2 hours, right? Now this is a company that I know uses Creo for CAD and Windchill for PLM. Right? As a quality technician, hey, why don't you have access to CAD? And he says, well, engineering won't share that with us. Now you have someone, quadrupling their workload, right? Because they don't have the data they need in order to work efficiently, right? Now imagine if that technician had access to a shared drive where the ETRAGE publisher automatically published the CAD documents needed, right? The native CAD files, for example, right? Where he can just go in addition to the 2D drawing, take the CAD file, open that up, and in a quarter of the time, get his work done much quicker, right? And so that really is the value of the ETRAGE publisher, right? It's the fact that, number one, you can streamline processes with automation, right? You no longer have to, hire someone to get a task done, train them on how to get it done, and then verify that it's done. The ETRAGE publisher just does it, right? You can accelerate time to market and also, again, increase employee satisfaction, right? If you can get your employees the tools they need and the data they need to take action when they need it, right, without having to go hunt and search through, 5 different databases to find that information, right? It makes life just go on, a whole lot easier, right? And so all of these are the reasons why we created the ETRAGE publisher, and these are the values and benefits that we've seen many of our current customers, espouse as well, right? It's the fact that you could, more than 4x your time and effort, with the right data at your fingertips, right? And you could reduce your manual tasks and minimize data entry errors and ensure that you have, real time and accurate, data at your fingertips, right? So at this point, I will pass it on to Scott, and he will handle the Q&A portion of the webinar.
Well, Shay, thank you very much. We'll cover these first set of bullet points, and I have a few others off the screen that I'll read out to you. But first off, can you publish data to my homegrown database? That's a common one we've gotten in the past.
Yeah, thanks. And great question. And yeah, the answer to that is yes. And so oftentimes it's usually in consultation with the customer, right, to understand what their database is, how it's currently set up. But ultimately, the goal is, if you already have a database you currently use and you like, and people are currently utilizing, we want to make sure that we increase adoption and minimize any friction for changing from one particular viewing solution or database solution to another one. And so, yes, we can publish data to your existing homegrown database.
And next, a question around licensing are there any requirements around named user? What is the licensing terms for access?
Oh, great question. For the ETRAGE publisher, there is a license, right, for essentially what we call it a site license, right, of the publisher to be used across of the enterprise. But beyond that, there is no license or fee required for each user to access it, right? So it doesn't matter if you have a team of 100 people or 1,000 people, right? We do not have named user licenses that are required.
Does this publisher need to be upgraded every few years like Windchill requires?
Again, the publisher does not need to be upgraded like Windchill does. So again, like I mentioned, on the Windchill side of things, it's a very light, application that attaches onto Windchill that can be, taken on or off in 10 or 15 minutes, right? And so really what we find is whenever there's a Windchill upgrade happening, right, the upgrade can happen, outside of the ETRAGE application, right? And ETRAGE as a company, we do have upgrade services, right, where we can handle your upgrade for you, right? But once the upgrade is done, again, it takes all of, less than half an hour to then, add on the publisher onto Windchill after the fact as well, right? And so again, the publisher itself does not need to be upgraded like Windchill does.
Next question is around CAD tools. And I think you covered this to at least a large degree, but if a customer has 3 or more different CAD tools that they have to use on a regular basis, is that at all problematic?
No, that is not problematic at all. No, yeah, we do have customers that have that are multi-CAD organizations, whether it's organically or through mergers and acquisitions over the years. And yes, we can support multi-CAD tools that link to Windchill. Yes.
On the watermarking feature, which I believe you also covered today, does that stay on the document outside of Windchill? Does that feed back into Windchill?
Oh, great question. So yes, we can watermark like I showed in the demo, and also yes, the watermark stays on the document. In this, maybe it's a PDF in this case, even outside of Windchill, and you could also then take again any of the watermark documents or really any deliverable that the publisher has published out of Windchill. You can take all that information and, if desired, publish that back into Windchill as well, right? And so if you want to know, for example, in the case of, hey, we sent this particular drawing or whatever to a supplier, but we want to know what that is and to track that for auditing purposes in the future, we can configure the publisher to not only send that to the repository for the supplier, but also then, push that data back into Windchill as an attachment, for example. Right? Yeah. Okay.
Next, we already covered this publisher sending files to a homegrown viewing system. Are there any locations or viewing tools that we cannot publish to?
That's a great question. Honestly, I would say the answer is no. There's none that I've seen. I would say that we cannot publish to, right? But ultimately, I would say it starts with a conversation with us, right, where you come to us and we discuss, well, what's your current database solution or your viewing solution, and then we can see, okay, can we work with that, right? But so far, there's not been one that we've come across where we've not been flexible enough with our publisher to be able to publish into. So.
Next question around implementation and setup. How long does it take to install, configure, and set up the publisher in a typical use case?
Good question. Typically, I would say it's probably about half a day of services required to install and configure the publisher, right? And usually this is, again, after we have preliminary discussions with you as a company, and we understand your business processes, how you want the data to flow, who you want to be accessing the published data, where they will be accessing that data, right? So we have all these all these discussions to scope out the work right ahead of time and how you want everything configured. And once all that's it's pre-planned, right? It's typically half a day to configure and install the publisher.
When it comes to a Windchill administrator being trained to tweak that configuration, how much training is involved for that role once the publisher is already in place?
That's incredibly simple. There's little or no training that's required. Most customers really only need 15 or 30 minutes of a tutorial by web meeting to review the configuration options, and they can be up and running.
And this tool publish back into Windchill?
Yes, like I already mentioned, yes, we can publish data out of Windchill and also check that back into Windchill as well. Yes.
On another question around watermarkings, how configurable are the watermarking options?
Great question. The watermarking options are incredibly flexible and configurable, right? And so, again, I just showed a very simple example here, but we could also configure these with many different attributes, right, from Windchill, right? We can customize the text. We could change the font color, right? In this case, I just use black as the font color for the watermarking. We can change the color of the font, where it's placed, if it's placed diagonally or the top or the bottom corner. We can watermark all pages or some pages, right? The watermarking is very, very flexible in how you can customize it.
Excellent. Down to our last 3 questions, it looks like. Does the ETRAGE Publisher work with Teamcenter? Also follow up on that, Innovia and 3D Experience.
I'd say currently we do not integrate into those PLM platforms, right? To work directly with them. But if you're an organization that's standardized on Windchill, right, and maybe you have an acquisition from of another company that's on Teamcenter, for example, and you want to do a migration. So yeah, we have tools, within ETRAGE to migrate that data from Teamcenter, for example, or Innovia or 3D Experience. We can migrate that data to Windchill, and then the ETRAGE Publisher can start to publish the data from when it's within Windchill.
Next, can you publish bills of material?
Great question. And yep, the answer to that is yes. Yeah, so we can absolutely publish BOMs. And so one of the use cases we've seen with that is, someone in purchasing where, you have an order that comes in for a particular, assembly, and you want to see the BOM, and you want to be able to have all of the PDFs of all the drawings, right, for the items in that BOM, right? That's something where we can publish, all the drawings plus BOM, and neatly package that into maybe a zip file, for example, for a purchasing person to go access and take action on.
Very good. Another question from the audience: does this application have a dependency on the CreaView adapters, and do we need a dedicated license for all the authoring applications?
Does this have a dependency on the CreaView adapters? The answer to that is no. We do not need, we don't have any dependency on that. And in fact, we work outside of the CreaView adapters, right? And so, so our publishing has nothing to do with the CreaView adapters.
And is there a dedicated license needed for the authoring?
Oh yes, for the licensing, for the authoring, I would say that would be yes. You wouldn't need a dedicated license for the publishing and authoring.
This might be the last one. Is there a limit to how often or how many publishing jobs can be completed?
There is no limit to that. At ETRAGE, we do not limit you on how many you can publish, and we do not change licensing tiers depending on how many publishing jobs you run. We like to market the product is essentially you own it, once you're and you could publish as many jobs as you want. Our goal is to help facilitate your business processes and to make sure that everyone across the enterprise can see and use and take action on that data.
I'll comment as well there. I do know in some cases we have customers who publish just giant, vast volumes of files, and in some cases we have had to. Some customers have had to install multiple publishers to keep up with the sheer volume of that they are doing.
Correct.
And then I've also asked to mention on the Teamcenter front, we should have an exciting announcement come January 2025. I think we can wrap this up unless you have any last thoughts, Shayi?
No last thoughts. So just to piggyback on what you shared there about the publishing jobs. So yes, it's the fact that, outside of the Windchill, layer, the client or the client layer, you can have multiple different request processors, right? In this example, I just showed one, right? Where you could have multiple request processor machines, right? That can run. So again, depending on how vast your publishing, need is, right? You could spin up, 2, 3, 4, or however many request processors you need to churn through and publish, however many jobs requested.
Excellent. Thanks again, everyone. If you need to revisit this, the recording should be available within 24 hours. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you, guys.